Have you ever thought that just one hug from your daughter could make you hand over your entire future? I did. And I almost lost everything because of it. That night in Ashford, the little Montana town I've called home for over 40 years, the autumn air was cool, and the kitchen smelled like hickory smoke from the roast I'd been tending all afternoon. I still cook the dishes Melissa loved when she was a kid, even though she's been into quinoa and kale for years now. Maybe it's habit. Maybe it's my way of holding on to the memory of Margaret, my wife, who passed away 7 years ago. The doorbell rang. When I opened it, Melissa and her husband Trevor stood there. Melissa stepped forward and wrapped me in a hug longer than usual, warmer than it's been in years. Since her mother died, she's kept her affection short, polite. That hug, it threw me off guard. Trevor followed her in, carrying a bottle of red wine. He knows I can't drink because of my blood pressure, but he brings wine every time anyway. We sat down to dinner, and for a while it was the usual small talk, Melissa chatting about her marketing job, Trevor tossing in a few insurance industry stories. Then I saw them exchange a glance, quick, deliberate, and the tone shifted. Dad, Melissa began, her voice tinged with excitement. Trevor and I have been working on something big. A new business idea. We'd be the first in Montana to do it, combining real estate insurance with targeted marketing. One stop for home buyers and sellers. It's going to be huge. I kept my fork poised. And what would that take? Trevor didn't hesitate. $680,000. That covers office space, equipment, staffing, and marketing for the first year. I set my fork down. $683,000. That's nearly every cent I've saved over my entire career, plus what Margaret's life insurance left me. Melissa reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Dad, this could change our lives. And Mom would be so proud to see us building something like this together. That one line went right through me. She knew it would. Margaret had always dreamed of Melissa running her own business, standing on her own 2 feet. And here she was, my only child, telling me she was ready to do it, but only if I helped. We finished dinner, but I hardly tasted anything after that. Trevor talked numbers, Melissa painted pictures of bright offices and happy clients. I kept seeing Margaret's smile in my mind, hearing her voice telling me to help Melissa chase her dreams. Before they left that night, Melissa hugged me again. Dad, if you're willing, we'll do everything by the book. Contracts, paperwork, your name on everything. You'll be an investor, not just a donor. We want to make you part of this. I told her I'd think about it, but deep down I already knew. The next morning, I called Victor Lang, a local attorney I trust, and set up a meeting. By the end of that week, I was sitting in his office with Melissa and Trevor reviewing an investment agreement that spelled out my contribution, $680,000, and my 30% stake in the company. Victor raised an eyebrow at the size of the investment. That's a big commitment, Harold. Are you sure? Melissa squeezed my arm before I could answer. Dad knows this is the right move. We're in this together. I signed. I told myself it was an investment in their future, in family, in hope. But looking back, it was the first step into a trap I never saw coming. If a family member asked you for nearly all your savings to start a business, what would you do? The next morning, there was a plain white envelope on my porch. No name, no return address, just sitting there like it had been dropped in a hurry. Inside one sheet of paper, typed, 4 words. Goodbye, old timer. My hands went cold. I picked up the phone and called Melissa. It rang and rang, then her voicemail picked up. "You've reached Melissa Kane. Leave a message after the beep." "Melissa, it's Dad. Call me back. Urgent." I tried Trevor next. Straight to voicemail. By now, my stomach was twisting. I grabbed my jacket, got in the truck, and drove straight to their house on the edge of town. I rang the bell. Knocked. Nothing. Curtains drawn. The place looked like it hadn't been lived in for weeks. That's when Mrs. Green, their neighbor, called out from across the yard. "Harold, you looking for Melissa and Trevor?" "Yeah. Have you seen them?" She nodded. Early this morning around 6, they were loading suitcases into a cab. Lot of luggage. They didn't say where they were headed. Suitcases. A cryptic note. No calls back. The dots started connecting, and I didn't like the picture they made. I drove straight to the bank. Denise Carter, the branch manager, met me in her office. She knows me. I've had accounts there since the 80s. "Denise, I need to know what's going on with the business account I funded for my daughter and son-in-law," I said, sliding the investment agreement across her desk. Her polite smile faded. "There's been some unusual activity. At 7:10 this morning, there was an attempt to transfer $650,000 from the business account into a personal account under Melissa Kane's name. Then about an hour later, another attempt, $580,000 to a real estate agency in Nevada." I just stared at her. "Nevada. Yes. Property in the Lake Fallon area." She tapped her screen. 3 bedrooms, pool, lake view. Listed as a residence, not commercial. The air in the room felt heavier. My voice was low, tight. "Denise, the contract clearly states that funds are to be used for business purposes." She nodded. "That's why both transfers were blocked. Our system flags large transactions that don't match the stated purpose. The account is frozen pending explanation from the account holders. So the money was safe for now. But the fact was, staring me in the face, Melissa and Trevor had tried to take it and run. I left the bank and called Samuel Briggs, my old friend from the construction company. He picked up on the first ring. "Sam, they tried to drain the account, transfer it to their own names, then buy a house in Nevada." There was a long pause. "Then Harold, I told you. They were playing you. Now you have proof." Proof or not, I still couldn't wrap my head around it. My own daughter, my only child, had left me a goodbye note like I was nothing more than an obstacle to get past. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I answered. "Mr. Denton, this is Julia Ramirez from the Ashford Gazette. Your daughter just gave us a statement saying you're withholding her inheritance to control her life. I'd like your comment." I felt the heat rise in my chest. That's not what happened. I invested in a business that was supposed to open here in Ashford. They tried to transfer the funds into a personal account and buy a private home out of state. I have the bank records to prove it. "Would you be willing to provide documentation?" Julia asked. "You'll have it by the end of the day." When we hung up, I sat there staring at the note again. Goodbye, old-timer. 7 letters from my own daughter that told me in no uncertain terms where I stood in her life. By the next morning, the Ashford Gazette had already pulled Melissa's inheritance story from their website. Julia Ramirez called me herself. "Mr. Denton, we reviewed the documents you sent. Bank logs, the investment contract, even that note you found. Your account matches the facts. We won't be running your daughter's statement. It should have been a relief. but it didn't feel like winning. Melissa hadn't just tried to take my money. She'd tried to take my name, my reputation, and grind it into the dirt. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee going cold, staring out the window at the Rockies in the distance. This house, this town, everything in my life had been built over decades. And my own child had decided it was worth nothing compared to a house by a lake in Nevada. That's when the phone rang again. This time the voice was a man's. "Mr. Denton, this is Randall Pierce. I represent Melissa and Trevor Kane. I understand there's been a misunderstanding regarding the use of your investment." A misunderstanding? I almost laughed. They tried to buy a private home with company funds the day after I wired them nearly $700,000. That's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud. He cleared his throat. My clients maintain that the home was to be used partially as an office for the new business. The contract does not specify a city or state for operations. There it was, the loophole Victor Lang had warned me about. We'd been so focused on protecting the funds we hadn't spelled out where the business had to be. Pierce continued, "We're prepared to seek a court order to release the account unless an amicable resolution can be reached." I kept my voice steady. The account's frozen because the bank flagged the transactions as personal. The only resolution is they give back the money and walk away. "Mr. Denton," he said smoothly, "if this goes to court, it could be long and costly. For everyone." When I hung up, I called Samuel. "They've got a lawyer. They're threatening to sue." Sam didn't sound surprised. "This is when you draw the line, Harold. If you cave now, they'll keep coming." That afternoon, Melissa's number flashed on my screen. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was syrup sweet with that edge she gets when she's trying to bend me. "Dad, I know you're upset, but we can work this out. Don't ruin the family over money. Call me back before you do something you can't undo." 10 minutes later, another call, Trevor this time. "Harold, be reasonable. We've already quit our jobs, given up our lease. We're hanging here with nothing. Just approve the transfer, and we'll get back on track." Back on track. As if buying a lakefront home on my dime was the track we'd agreed on. That night, Victor Lang came by my house. We sat in the living room, the old grandfather clock ticking between us. "They're floating the idea of a settlement," Victor said. "They keep $500,000, return the rest. No charges, no further claims." I shook my head. $500,000 for trying to rob me blind. Not happening. The most they'll get is $260,000, and that's being generous. "Are you ready for them to say no?" "Yes," I said, surprising myself with how sure I sounded. Victor nodded. "Then I'll communicate your offer. But be ready, they may push back hard." I looked at the note on the coffee table again. 4 words, black ink on white paper, "Goodbye, old timer." Not yet, I thought. Not until I say so. 2 days later, Victor called. "They've countered 400,000. Says it's their final number." I didn't even hesitate. My final number is still 260. If they don't like it, we'll see them in court. "All right," he said. "They've agreed to meet in my office to discuss it face to face." I didn't like that. A face-to-face was their last chance to play the emotional card. And Melissa knew exactly which buttons to push. The morning of the meeting, I dressed in my navy sport coat, respectable but not flashy, and got there early. The conference room smelled faintly of lemon polish. Victor sat across from me, shuffling papers. "They'll be here any minute," he said. When the door opened, Melissa walked in with Trevor right behind her, and their lawyer, Randall Pierce, in tow. She looked tired, dark circles, hair pulled back like she hadn't bothered much. But the way her eyes scanned the room, I knew she was still calculating. We all sat down. Victor opened, "We're here to confirm terms. Mr. Denton is willing to allow your clients to keep $260,000 from the original investment. The remaining $420,000 will be returned to him. Both parties will sign a mutual release of claims." "Is that accurate?" Pierce nodded. "Accurate, but before we put pen to paper, Melissa would like a private word with her father." I shook my head. "If she's got something to say, she can say it here." Melissa sighed, then looked straight at me. "Dad, this isn't what I wanted. I know it looks bad, but we were just trying to build a better life. I thought if you knew we wanted to move, you'd shut it down." I kept my face still. "You're right. I would have said no to spending my investment on a personal house in Nevada. That's not a business." "It would have been both," she snapped before her voice softened. "Can't you see we were suffocating here?" Trevor jumped in. "Harold, this way we can at least land on our feet. We'll make the 260 work. Just don't shut the door on us forever." I leaned back, studying them. For a second, I saw Melissa at 8 years old, hair in pigtails, asking me to push her higher on the swing. And then I remembered the note, "Goodbye, old-timer." Victor slid the papers across the table. "If we're agreed, we can sign now." Melissa's hand trembled just slightly as she picked up the pen. Trevor signed quickly, like he wanted to get out of there before I changed my mind. When it was my turn, I paused. "Melissa," I said quietly, "consider this your last gift from me. After today, we go our separate ways." Her jaw tightened. "If that's what you want, it's what I need." We all signed. Victor gathered the copies. Pierce shook my hand with the enthusiasm of a man wrapping up an unpleasant chore, and they left without looking back. Standing in the quiet conference room, I felt lighter, not happy, not sad, just free. You ever finally stand your ground with someone, and it's like setting down a heavy backpack you didn't even realize you'd been carrying for years, and suddenly you can breathe a little easier. The transfer hit my account 3 days later. $420,000 back in my name. I sat at my desk, logged into online banking, and stared at the number for a long time. Not because of the money itself, though it was a relief to have it safe, but because of what it meant. This chapter, ugly as it was over. Melissa and Trevor were gone. The house felt different without their shadow hanging over it. No more bracing myself for a call about unexpected expenses or a knock on the door with forced smiles and bigger asks. Just quiet. That afternoon, I walked down to the park in the center of Ashford. The air was cool, the lake still the mountains, in the distance capped with early snow. I took my usual bench by the water, the one where I've come to think things over since Margaret passed. Ducks drifted by, chasing breadcrumbs from a little boy and his grandpa. For a moment, I let myself imagine what it would have been like if things had turned out differently. Melissa running an honest business, calling me for advice instead of money, stopping by just to talk. That's the picture I'd been carrying in my head for years. And maybe that was part of the problem, holding on to a version of her that doesn't exist anymore. Samuel called that evening. "So it's done, I said. They took the 260 and signed the release. I doubt I'll hear from them again." "You sound better," he said. "I think I am." I looked around my kitchen, same old checkered curtains, same old oak table, and realized it felt like my space again. Life slipped back into a rhythm. Mornings with coffee and the paper. A walk to the hardware store or the library. Afternoons tinkering in the garage or working in the garden. Chess nights with Samuel. It wasn't exciting, but it was mine. Every once in a while, the phone would ring from an unknown number, and I'd wonder if it was Melissa. I never answered. I figured if it was important enough, they'd leave a message. They never did. One day I opened my desk drawer and saw the envelope. The plain white one with the words, "Goodbye, old timer." I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. For a long time it had felt like a wound. Now it felt like a marker, a before and after. I slid it back into the drawer and closed it. Whatever Melissa and Trevor are doing now, I wish them no harm. But I also don't wish them back into my life. Some doors once closed are better left that way. And as I sat on my porch that evening, the sun dropping behind the Rockies, I realized something. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't walking on eggshells in my own home. I could finally breathe. Thank you for spending this time with me today. It truly means a lot. If this story spoke to you, please subscribe to Brian's Story so you don't miss the next one. And if you faced something like this yourself, share this video with someone who might need to hear it and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I read every single one.